Luna's childhood was filled with memories of a world that no longer existed. She remembered playing in the gardens of the Crystal City, running through fields of bioluminescent flowers that glowed with soft purple light. Her mother had been a master of the ancient magic, a woman whose power could reshape mountains and summon storms from clear skies. Her father had been a dragon keeper, one of the few humans allowed to live among the elves before the wars began. The Great War started when Luna was just 7 years old. She did not understand it then, but she would come to know every terrible detail of those dark years. The aliens came from beyond the stars, creatures of pure malice and hunger. They wanted to consume everything, to strip planets bare and move on to the next world. The elves fought back with their magic and the humans helped with their technology, but it was not enough. The invasions came in waves, and each wave took more lives than the last. Luna remembered the day her mother died. She had been standing with her father in the high tower when the sky turned black with enemy ships. Her mother had climbed to the tallest spire and unleashed a spell so powerful that it had shattered 3 of the massive warships in a single blast. But the effort had cost her everything. Luna watched from below as her mother's body simply faded away, burned up from the inside by the magnitude of power she had released. Her father had held her close that night and whispered that she was special, that she carried something within her blood that could save them all. He taught her everything he knew about dragons and about the bonds that could form between elves and the ancient beasts. For 5 years he trained her relentlessly, showing her how to feel the pulse of magic in the air, how to communicate without words, how to merge her consciousness with a dragon's mind. When Luna was 12, her father had taken her to the dragon caverns hidden deep beneath the mountains. There, in chambers of crystal and stone, lay eggs that had not hatched in 300 years. Her father explained that these dragons could only be awakened by the right person, someone with pure elf blood combined with a human heart, someone like Luna. She had walked through the caverns alone, following a path lit only by her own internal magic, and then she had found them. 2 massive eggs, one red as blood and one silver as moonlight, resting on pedestals of ancient stone. She had placed her hands on each one and felt them respond to her touch. She had poured her life force into them, calling to the souls within, promising them a protector and a friend. The eggs had hatched 3 days later. Ember emerged first, a small dragon no larger than a horse at first, but his scales were already burning with inner fire. He had looked at Luna with eyes that seemed to understand everything, and she had known in that moment that her life would be forever bound to his. Ash followed a few hours later, smaller than her brother but moving with an elegance that seemed almost magical in itself. Luna had raised them in secret, hidden in the deep caverns where the aliens could not find them. Her father brought her supplies and news from the outside world. The news grew worse with each passing month. City after city fell to the alien forces. The human settlements were destroyed first, their technology no match for the invaders' weapons. Then the great elf kingdoms fell one by one. When Luna was 15, her father brought the worst news of all. The humans were leaving. Those who had survived the initial invasions had built ships and were evacuating the planet. They would not abandon the elves, he told her, but they needed to preserve their species. They would find safety on distant worlds and prepare for a counterattack. Luna had begged him to help the elves, to stay and fight, but he had already made his decision. He was going with them. He told her that this was her purpose, that she and the dragons were meant to be guardians of this world. He told her that one day when the time was right, the humans would return. He gave her a crystal pendant before he left, a small stone that glowed with blue light. He told her it was a beacon, a way for the returning humans to find her if she ever needed help. Then he had walked down the mountain path and disappeared into the night sky, leaving her alone with 2 dragons that were still growing, still learning how to exist in a world of endless war. The next 3 years had been a blur of survival and battle. Luna and her dragons had learned to work together in ways that even ancient elf texts had not described. The bond between them became stronger than blood, stronger than magic itself. She could feel what they felt, see through their eyes, and they could access the vast reserve of power within her. But survival came at a cost. Luna had not been able to save everyone. She had watched as entire communities were wiped out. She had seen the aliens grow bolder and more determined as the years passed. She had come to understand that they were not mindless invaders but a calculating military force with specific objectives. They wanted to eliminate every last elf and human from this world, and they had the resources and determination to do it. Luna had made a decision years ago to stop running and start fighting back. She had established her base in the Crystal Plateau, a place of ancient power where the magical defenses were still strong enough to repel attacks. She had stored supplies and weapons there, things her father had left behind, things she had salvaged from fallen cities. On the day the massive invasion force arrived, Luna had been meditating with Ember and Ash, preparing her mind and body for what she knew was coming. She could feel it in the very fabric of reality around her, a disturbance in the magical frequencies that meant something significant was about to happen. Her dragons felt it too. When she opened her eyes and looked toward the horizon, she saw the black ships descending through the clouds. This was bigger than any previous invasion. This was a final assault, a determined effort to end the last resistance on this world. Luna had known it was coming eventually, but she had not expected it to be so soon. She had reached out and touched each dragon, sending calming waves of energy through them. They were scared, yes, but also ready. They had been born for this, trained for this, and they would not fail. Luna had climbed onto Ember's back and felt the familiar warmth of his scales beneath her hands. She had looked back at Ash and nodded. Then the battle had begun, and everything had changed. The dragons had fought with a ferocity that even the aliens had not expected. Ember's flames had been so hot that they had melted the armor plating of the mechanical units. Ash's claws had torn through shields and weapon systems with ease. Luna had channeled her magic through them, amplifying their natural abilities until they had been unstoppable forces of nature. But then the massive war machine had descended, and Luna had felt true fear for the first time since she was a child. She had known that her power alone would not be enough to defeat it. She had started to prepare herself for the possibility that this might be the end, that she and her dragons might die today. And then the humans had come, rising from the northern mountains with their ancient weapons glowing with power. Luna had seen the leader approach, a woman with kind eyes who had extended her hand in friendship. In that moment, Luna had realized something profound. She was not alone anymore. The world was going to change again, and this time perhaps it would change for the better. The dragons had roared in celebration, and Luna had held onto that sound like a lifeline. Whatever came next, she would face it with her dragons and with these humans who had returned to help her fight. The future was uncertain, but it was no longer hopeless, and that made all the difference. The human woman's name was Commander Grace, and she had been 17 years old when she left this planet with the last evacuation ships. She had spent every day of the last 15 years thinking about the world she had left behind, thinking about the elf girl who had been her father's student. She had wondered many times if Luna had survived, if the dragons had been awakened, if there was any hope left on this dying world. Grace's forces moved with military precision as they established a defensive perimeter around the Crystal Plateau. Luna watched from Ember's back as hovercrafts touched down, and soldiers in advanced armor disembarked. There were nearly 200 of them, all carrying weapons that glowed with the same kind of magical energy that the dragons used. They moved with purpose and training, clearly hardened by years of battle. Grace approached Luna slowly, her hands visible and empty, a gesture of non-aggression. When she reached the base of the plateau where Ember had landed, she removed her helmet and looked up at the elf woman sitting atop the great red dragon. Recognition flashed across Grace's face. "You are Luna," Grace said, and her voice was warm with emotion. "You are so much like your father. He spoke about you all the time when he came to our colony. He told us that you were the hope of this world." Luna climbed down from Ember's back and approached Grace slowly, her violet eyes studying the human woman carefully. Grace was tall, with dark skin and hair that was pulled back in a military braid. She carried herself with confidence and authority, but there was kindness in her expression. "You knew my father?" Luna asked, her voice soft after so many years of speaking mainly to dragons. "I did," Grace replied. "He was my father's colleague and my mentor. He taught me about the magical technology your people had developed. He told me that one day, if we were strong enough and if we believed in ourselves, we would return to this world and stand with the elves against the darkness. That day has come." The two women stood in silence for a moment, understanding passing between them without words. Grace's soldiers began setting up a command center, creating a temporary base of operations. Luna learned that the humans had established a hidden colony in a system 3 light years away. They had been building strength, developing new weapons, and training soldiers specifically for this mission of reconquest and rescue. Grace explained that the alien forces had become overextended in their campaigns against multiple civilizations. They had learned that the best way to combat the invaders was to strike at their supply lines and communication networks. The humans had been doing exactly that for the past decade, gradually weakening the aliens' position across several star systems. "We heard rumors that an elf still lived here," Grace told Luna. "We didn't know if it was true, but we came anyway. We had to know, and when we detected the massive invasion force beginning its descent, we knew we couldn't wait any longer. We had to come and help." Grace led Luna to the command center where tactical displays showed the extent of the alien invasion. There were still thousands of enemy troops on the planet, most of them concentrated in the lowlands trying to capture supply depots and strategic locations. The massive war machine that had nearly defeated Luna and her dragons was being held in orbit, a deterrent designed to prevent large-scale resistance movements. "We need to coordinate our efforts," Grace said, pulling up a holographic map. "Your dragons are powerful, but they cannot be everywhere at once. We have soldiers, technology, and tactical knowledge. Together we can push the aliens back. We can liberate this world." Luna studied the map, her mind working through the possibilities. She had spent so long fighting alone that the idea of having allies, of being part of something larger than herself, felt almost surreal, but she could see the potential. With the humans' organization and her dragon's power, they could do more than just survive. They could actually win. Over the next 2 days, Grace's forces and Luna coordinated a series of strikes against alien positions. Ember and Ash, rested and fed after the earlier battle, were deployed with surgical precision. They would arrive at specific locations, eliminate enemy forces, and depart before reinforcements could arrive. Meanwhile, human soldiers would secure the sites and gather intelligence. The strategy worked perfectly. Within 48 hours, Luna and the humans had liberated 5 major settlements and prevented the aliens from consolidating their forces. But then something changed. The aliens began pulling back, consolidating their remaining forces into fewer, more heavily defended positions. Grace studied the data and came to a troubling conclusion. The aliens were preparing for a full planetary bombardment. If they could not conquer the world, they were determined to make sure no one else could live here either. They would rain destruction from above until nothing remained but ash and ruins. "We need to destroy that war machine in orbit," Grace told Luna. "It's their platform for commanding the bombardment. Without it, they lose their ability to coordinate attacks from above. It will take a major operation, but I think we can do it." Luna felt a chill run down her spine. An orbital operation would be unlike anything she had ever attempted. Dragons could fly high, but they had never ventured into space. They would need to survive in the vacuum. To fly against an enemy they had not fought before. It was risky, perhaps even impossible. But as Luna looked into Grace's determined eyes, she knew what had to be done. This was not just about survival anymore. This was about reclaiming a world, about giving all living species on this planet a future worth living. She nodded her acceptance. Grace smiled with relief and appreciation. She began outlining the plan, showing Luna how they would use advanced technology to protect the dragons in the harsh environment of space. They would attach specialized suits to Ember and Ash that would provide oxygen and protect their bodies from radiation. Grace would ride with Luna on Ember's back, her own advanced armor designed to withstand the vacuum of space. The operation was set for the following dawn. Luna spent the night with her dragons, running her hands over their scales and speaking to them in the ancient language of their bonding. She explained what they would need to do, and she felt them accept it. They had been born for greatness, and now they would achieve it. As the sun rose over the crystal plateau on the day of the operation, Luna climbed onto Ember's back. Grace secured herself behind her, wrapping one arm around Luna's waist. Ash positioned herself alongside them, ready for the flight into the unknown. The spacecraft designed to boost them into orbit rose from the valley below, its engines burning with brilliant blue light. Luna took a deep breath and held onto Ember's neck. Whatever happened next would change everything, and she was ready to face it. The ascent into orbit was the most terrifying experience of Luna's life. The spacecraft's engines pushed upward with tremendous force, and she felt her body pressed against Ember's scales. The red dragon beneath her remained calm, his breathing steady, and even as they climbed higher and higher. Behind her, Grace gripped her tightly, her armor making soft clicking sounds as it adjusted to the changing pressure. Luna could feel the atmosphere growing thinner as they climbed. The sky above changed from blue to dark purple to the absolute black of space. Stars began to appear, not just a few scattered points of light, but thousands upon thousands of them, stretching across the infinite expanse above and below. The spacecraft released them at 100,000 feet above the planet's surface. The protective suits that Grace had designed activated immediately, sealing around Ember and Ash's bodies. Luna gasped as she felt the suit lock into place around her as well, but it was surprisingly comfortable, designed to move with her body without restriction. She opened her eyes and looked down at the world below. She could see the entire continent at once, the mountains and valleys, the clouds and oceans. She could see the places where cities had once stood, now empty and dark. She could see the places where she had fought and survived. Everything that mattered to her was down there. This beautiful world that she had been fighting to protect. Ember's wings spread wide, and even though they were in the vacuum of space where sound could not travel, Luna felt the dragon's powerful muscles flex. The specialized suits allowed them to propel themselves through space by channeling magical energy into directional propulsion. It felt strange to fly without the resistance of air, without the traditional methods the dragons had always used. Ash flew close beside them, her silver scales reflecting starlight. Luna could feel the connection between her and both dragons, even stronger now that she was using her magic to power their suits. They were not just flying together, they were unified in purpose and energy. The alien war machine appeared above them, a massive structure of metal and weapon systems that looked like a small moon. It was easily 5 miles across at its widest point, bristling with turrets and defensive structures. Luna had never seen anything so large in her life. There, Grace said, pointing to a specific area of the structure. That is where the central command processor is located. We need to destroy that and the entire machine will become inert. It is the heart of the system. They descended toward the designated target area, moving as quickly as the protective suits would allow. The alien sensors detected them almost immediately, and massive weapons began to activate. Energy beams lanced out toward them, but the suits were equipped with defensive shields. The beams deflected away, and Luna felt the magical energy within her being drawn upon to maintain the protections. Ember roared, a sound that carried on the magical frequencies even though the vacuum prevented normal sound from traveling. The red dragon's eyes glowed with fierce determination. He had never fought in space before, but his instincts were perfect. He banked away from an incoming beam and dove toward the surface of the war machine. Ash followed, her movements even more graceful and precise. She wove between the energy beams, her body impossibly agile in the low-gravity environment. Luna channeled her magic through both dragons simultaneously, something she had never attempted before. The power flowed out of her and amplified the dragon's natural abilities until they became living weapons themselves. Ember's flames erupted across a section of the war machine's hull, burning through the armor plating and exposing the systems beneath. The fire in space was different from fire on the planet, a pure magical flame that needed no air to burn. It consumed everything it touched, leaving only melted metal and slag. Ash attacked from the opposite angle, her claws extended and glowing with magical energy. She tore through defensive structures with brutal efficiency, creating an opening that Luna could target with precision. Grace's hands moved across the controls of her armor's targeting system, and suddenly the war machine's own sensors turned against it. Internal explosions began to cascade through the structure as weapon systems misfired. They were winning, Luna realized with a surge of hope. They were actually going to do this. But then the main cannon of the war machine charged and fired directly at them. The beam was immense, far larger than any of the previous weapons' fire. There was no way to dodge it, no way to defend against something that massive. Luna instinctively threw her hands up, channeling every ounce of power she possessed into a defensive shield. Behind her, Grace did the same with her armor systems. Ember and Ash moved to shield Luna with their own bodies, their ancient instincts driving them to protect their bonded partner above all else. The beam hit the combined defense with incredible force. Luna felt her magical reserves being drained at an alarming rate. For a moment she thought it was all over, that they would die here in the cold darkness of space. But then something unexpected happened. Power flowed into her from Ember and Ash, their life force merging with hers. Grace's armor amplified the connection, and suddenly Luna was drawing on 3 sources of power instead of just one. The shield held, and then it began to push back against the beam. The combined magical and technological forces created a feedback loop. The beam that the war machine had fired returned along its original path, striking the cannon that had launched it. The weapon system exploded in a chain reaction that spread across the entire structure of the massive vessel. The war machine began to break apart, sections of it fragmenting and tumbling away into space. The central command processor that Grace had targeted was destroyed in the initial cascade of explosions. Within minutes, the most advanced weapon system that the aliens possessed was nothing but floating debris. Luna felt weak and exhausted, her magical reserves nearly empty. But she also felt something else, something deeper and more profound. She felt the gratitude of Ember and Ash flowing through her, felt their pride in what they had accomplished together. She felt Grace's relief and determination. They turned back toward the planet, descending through the upper atmosphere. Luna could see the blue sky returning as they fell, could see the familiar landscape of her world coming into focus. The protective suits began to wear out as they entered the thicker atmosphere, but they held long enough to bring them safely back to the crystal plateau. As Ember's feet touched solid ground, Luna felt the suit deactivate and fall away. She slid from the dragon's back, her legs nearly giving out beneath her. Grace caught her and held her upright. "We did it," Grace said, tears streaming down her face. "We actually did it. The war machine is destroyed. The aliens have lost their advantage." Luna looked at her friend and ally, and she smiled despite her exhaustion. Behind them, Ember and Ash released victorious roars that echoed across the mountains. They had accomplished something impossible. They had struck a devastating blow against the aliens. And somehow Luna knew that this was only the beginning of what they could achieve together. News of the war machine's destruction spread through the alien forces like wildfire. Within hours of Luna and her dragons returning to the planet's surface, enemy troops began to retreat from their advanced positions. The aliens had relied on that weapon system to maintain their tactical advantage, and without it, they realized that they were facing an enemy they could not defeat. Grace coordinated a massive assault across all occupied territories. Humans and dragons worked in perfect synchronization, hitting the aliens where they were weakest. The enemy forces, demoralized by the loss of their primary weapon, fought poorly. Within a week, the aliens had lost control of nearly every major settlement on the planet. But Grace knew that simply winning battles was not enough. They needed to completely drive the aliens from the planet and ensure that they could never return. She gathered Luna and her senior officers in the command center for a strategic meeting. "The remaining alien forces have consolidated in the northern regions," Grace explained, pointing to a holographic display of the planet. "They still have significant military capability, but they no longer have the numbers to mount a serious defensive campaign. If we can push them to their landing zones, we can trap them there and force a decisive surrender or elimination." Luna studied the map carefully. She could see the alien positions, could feel the magical disturbances that indicated their technological installations. She knew that route better than anyone, having traveled these lands for years in hiding. "There is a valley near the ice mountains where we can intercept them," Luna said, pointing to a location on the map. "It is a natural choke point. If we position your soldiers there and have Ember and Ash attack from above, we can force them into a position where they cannot escape." Grace nodded with approval. She had come to trust Luna's tactical instincts completely over the past week. The elf woman understood warfare in ways that went beyond simple strategy. She could sense things that no scanner or sensor could detect. The forces moved out the following morning. Grace led 200 soldiers through the mountain passes, while Luna and her dragons flew overhead, scouting for enemy positions. They encountered alien patrols, but these were quickly eliminated before they could alert the main force. By midday, they had reached the valley. The ground here was rocky and difficult to traverse, perfect for a defensive position. Grace's soldiers established defensive perimeters while Ember and Ash circled above, watching for any sign of enemy approach. They did not have to wait long. The alien forces came through the western pass in a massive convoy, thousands of troops and vehicles all moving with desperate speed toward their landing zones. They had no idea they were about to walk into a trap. Grace waited until they were fully committed to the valley, with no easy escape routes available. Then she gave the signal. Ember descended first, his massive body blocking the main pass and preventing retreat. Ash attacked from the side, her claws tearing through vehicle armor plating and destroying engines. Luna channeled her magic through both dragons, amplifying their natural abilities to devastating effect. Grace's soldiers emerged from their hiding positions and began advancing on the alien forces from 3 different directions. The aliens found themselves surrounded with nowhere to run. They attempted to fight back, launching missiles and energy weapons at their attackers, but it was futile. The battle lasted less than an hour. The aliens, facing overwhelming opposition and no hope of victory, began to surrender. Thousands of them laid down their weapons and raised their hands in capitulation. It was the most complete military victory that Luna had ever witnessed. As the fighting ended, Luna climbed down from Ember's back and walked among the captured aliens. She had never seen them up close before, never truly examined what these creatures looked like. They were strange beings, with multiple limbs and exoskeletons that gleamed like polished metal. They were nothing like humans or elves, creatures from a truly alien biology. But as she looked into their eyes, she saw something that surprised her. She saw fear, yes, but also something else. She saw intelligence and awareness. These were not mindless monsters. They were soldiers following orders just as Grace's troops were. Grace approached and placed a hand on Luna's shoulder. "They are prisoners of war now," Grace said quietly. "They will be treated according to the laws of combat. They will not be harmed." Luna nodded, understanding that despite everything these aliens had taken from her people, she would not become a killer simply for the sake of revenge. She would be better than that. Her people had always valued honor and mercy, and she would not abandon those values now. Over the next 2 weeks, the remaining alien forces on the planet either surrendered or attempted to flee. The few that tried to escape were tracked down and captured. Grace's forces worked methodically to secure every settlement and every corner of the planet. Slowly, the world began to change. Luna watched as humans and elves began working together to rebuild what had been destroyed. Settlements that had been empty for years came back to life. Farms were planted, homes were constructed, and slowly the scars of war began to fade. Grace established a new government, one that included both human and elf representatives. Luna was offered a position of leadership, but she declined. Instead, she asked to be allowed to focus on restoring the magical traditions of her people. She wanted to search the ruins of the great libraries and academies to recover the knowledge that had been lost. Grace supported this decision completely. She understood that Luna's greatest contribution would not be in politics or military strategy, but in reconnecting her people with their heritage. One evening, Luna stood on the crystal plateau with her dragons. Below, she could see the valley where the great battle had taken place. But now, instead of seeing death and destruction, she saw life returning. She saw lights from settlements, saw farmers working in fields, saw children playing in the streets. Ember nuzzled her gently, and she wrapped her arms around his great head. Ash came to stand beside them, her silver scales reflecting the light of the setting sun. "We did it," Luna whispered to her dragons. "We saved the world." In the distance, she could hear humans and elves working together to build something new, something better. The aliens were gone, but more importantly, the isolation and fear were gone too. A new era was beginning, an era of peace and cooperation. Luna felt hope in her heart for the first time in longer than she could remember. 6 months after the final battle, Luna stood in the reconstructed Crystal Library, one of the most sacred places in all of elf civilization. The walls were lined with thousands of books and scrolls, many of them recovered from the ruins of the great cities. It had taken months of careful excavation and preservation work, but the library had been restored to something resembling its former glory. Grace found her there, sitting at a massive wooden table surrounded by ancient texts. The human commander had become something more than an ally over the past months. She had become a close friend, a sister in spirit if not in blood. "I found something I thought you would want to see," Grace said, placing a small crystal device on the table in front of Luna. Luna recognized it immediately. It was a beacon like the one her father had given her, but this one contained a message. Her hands trembled slightly as she activated it. The air above the crystal shimmered and filled with a holographic image of her father. "Luna, my daughter," the image said, speaking in her father's voice. If you are seeing this message, then my hope has been realized. You have survived, you have bonded with the dragons, and you have protected our world. I am so proud of you." Luna felt tears streaming down her face as she listened to her father's recorded words. He spoke of his love for her, of his faith in her abilities, of his hope that one day humans and elves would stand together again. He told her that the humans had not abandoned the planet, but had been preparing in the hidden colonies for the day when they could return and help restore what had been lost. "I have one final gift for you," the message continued. "A location where I have hidden something of great importance to our people. It is a seed, Luna, a seed of the great tree, the oldest living thing in our world. That tree was destroyed in the early days of the war, but I was able to preserve a seed. When you are ready, I want you to plant it. Let it grow. Let it be a symbol of renewal for our people and for our world." The message faded, and Luna sat in silence for a long moment. Grace sat down beside her and took her hand. "We will help you," Grace said softly. "We will help you restore everything that was lost. This is not just your world anymore, Luna. It is our world too. We are all living here together now, all of us responsible for its future." Over the following months, Luna worked with Grace and the combined human and elf forces to rebuild civilization. But the most important project was the replanting of the great tree. She led an expedition to a sacred location, in the heart of the ancient forests where the original tree had once stood. The ceremony to plant the seed took place on a clear summer day. Hundreds of humans, elves, and even some of the alien prisoners who had chosen to remain on the planet gathered to witness the event. Luna held the seed in her hands, feeling the life force within it, and she planted it in the rich soil of the forest. As she pressed the earth around it, she felt something extraordinary happen. The seed responded to her magic immediately, sprouting and growing at an accelerated rate. Within minutes, a small sapling had emerged from the ground, its branches already reaching toward the sky. Ember and Ash approached and circled the young tree, their massive forms dwarfing the small plant, but there was nothing threatening in their movements. Instead, they seemed to be honoring the tree, celebrating its rebirth. The dragons had grown even larger in the 6 months since the war had ended. They had been well fed and happy, finally able to rest after years of constant battle. Their scales had taken on a deeper luster, and they had become even more beautiful than they had been before. 1 year after the war ended, Luna received news that changed everything. More humans were coming. Entire families from the distant colonies, people who wanted to be part of rebuilding this world. Over the coming months and years, the population would grow. More settlements would be established. The world would become alive again in ways that Luna had never imagined during the long, dark years of war. Grace proposed a new unified government, one that would be shared equally between humans and elves. Luna agreed to serve as the guardian of magic and heritage, a position that would allow her to focus on preserving and restoring the magical traditions of the elves, while also helping the humans understand and respect the cultural heritage of this ancient world. 5 years after the end of the war, Luna stood once again on the crystal plateau with her dragons. But everything had changed. Below, she could see a thriving community of humans, elves, and other species working together. The great tree had grown to enormous size, its branches spreading across the entire sacred grove, and beneath its shade, people from all civilizations would gather to share knowledge and stories. Ember had become something of a symbol for the new peace. Children, both human and elf, would come to ride on his back under strict supervision. He seemed to enjoy the attention, his massive form gentle despite its fearsome appearance. Ash had become a teacher, helping young people learn about the connection between consciousness and magic. Luna herself had found peace and purpose. She spent her days working with scholars to restore the lost knowledge of her people, while also helping humans understand the true nature of the magical forces that permeated this world. One evening, as the sun set over the mountains, Grace joined Luna on the plateau. They had become so close over the years that they were more like sisters than anything else. "I received a message today from the other colonies," Grace said. "There are reports of another invasive force gathering beyond the known space. It may take years for them to reach here, but we should begin preparing." Luna looked at her friend and smiled. There would always be challenges, always be threats to face, but now she would not face them alone. She had her dragons, she had Grace and the humans, she had the renewed elf civilization. Together they were stronger than any enemy could be. Then we will prepare, Luna said calmly. And when they come, we will be ready. But that is a battle for another day. Today, let us simply enjoy the peace we have fought so hard to achieve. Grace nodded and linked her arm through Luna's. They stood together on the plateau as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Below them, the lights of the settlements began to twinkle like earthbound stars. The world was alive again, and the future belonged to those who had the courage to build it. Ember and Ash settled down beside them, their massive forms warm against the cooling evening air. And in that moment, with her dragons and her closest friend beside her, Luna knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. She had come home at last,